Today's agenda, we're going to go over introductions of the presenters, and talk about the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency and the EIP Project Tracker, which was the foundation. Matt's going to take care of that. Mandy will share the California Resource Conservation District overview and share information about the RCD Project Tracker, which is the pilot program that they implemented back in July of last year. And then also the online demo, which Brian, our buddy here, who's a power user at Inland Empire, will walk us through using the tool live, and I think that will be valuable for everyone. Then we'll kind of share a little bit about the pilot results and what the RCDs are looking for in the next 2 years, and kind of a what's next, and joining the Project Perma community. Like I said, I'm pleased to have Mandy Parks, the district manager from Inland Empire. I first met her at the National Association of Conservation District annual meeting in Nashville, and it was a pleasure meeting her, and I'm glad that she was game to join us for today's webinar. Brian just learned he's from Connecticut and went to Redlands, University of Redlands, and he's been enjoying his time at the Inland Empire RCD. I believe he said he was an intern there too at the start, so that's great. And then Matt Deniston, my colleague, he's the founder and managing partner of Sitka Technology Group, and he will be able to provide a good background about Project Perma and our work with the Lake Tahoe and Environmental Improvement Program. So again, before I pass it off to Matt, I do want to let you all know that if you do have questions, use the Q&A console and let us know. There you go, Matt.
All right, thanks, Damon. So as many of you may already know, Lake Tahoe watershed straddles the boundaries of California and Nevada. There was a bi-state compact which established the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency in the late 1960s and mandated that they pursue achievement of environmental standards, including water quality, soil conservation, air quality, scenic quality, to name a few. And then in the 1990s, it became pretty clear to TRPA and its partners that regulations alone weren't going to achieve those goals. And so in 1997, the basin came together and established the Environmental Improvement Program. And I wanted to start here because this is really the genesis of the project tracker that the RCDs are now using, and wanted to kind of give you a little bit of the background and how it came to be. So the Environmental Improvement Program is a public-private capital improvement program designed to achieve those goals. And today there's hundreds of projects that are complete and many more that are in progress. In fact, they're just about ready to add their 1,000th project to the system. We're planning a small little party for that. They've invested over $2 billion since 1997. So a lot of money has been put on the ground to protect the amazing place that is the Tahoe Basin. One of the secrets of the success of their program, and I think many people believe, is that they started by some hard work to establish 34 performance measures to track progress against their objectives. This was work that a local outfit called Environmental Incentives helped TRPA establish those, and they were in place when Sitka came on the scene to help them out. For many years, the TRPA agency, they're not a funder, they're simply a regional coordinator of the program. And so it was an annual kind of fire drill and arduous process to get their 50+ partners around the basin to tell them what they did last year and to update their projects and what kind of accomplishments do they have and where did their funding come from, that kind of stuff. And so in 2014, Damon, if you could switch to the next slide. In 2014, TRPA knew, it kind of reached their limit and knew that there was a better way to track their expenditures and accomplishments. And so they went out to RFP, and luckily they ended up hiring Sitka to build the Environmental Improvement Program's project tracker. So this is a web-based platform with some pretty key workflows that allows their project implementers to log in and report on their projects or to propose new projects. So rather than have the data entry be done entirely by TRPA staff, it allowed them to kind of distribute that workload and get their partners to do that. And so the important thing to maybe note, maybe back on that prior slide real quick, Damon, is that the EIP project tracker is part of a larger platform with a goal of connecting people with information to improve decision-making and sustain investments in the basin. And so today we're focused on the highlighted element here, the EIP project tracker. But just know that it has and provides, this platform provides transparent access and fosters collaboration on a wide range of things, from transportation planning to TMDL management to daylighting regional monitoring data. So the EIP project tracker was one of the first components of this platform that was developed. So this next slide just shows a screenshot of the homepage. And later, when you see the RCD project tracker, the discerning eye will see that there's certainly some common elements, and that's because this was the first version. And on the next slide, there's a timeline that kind of collapses or summarizes the overall, some of the things I just talked about, some of the milestones. But the highlighted items here are that after a couple years of developing this project tracker, TRPA put an open source license on this platform. They realized that their needs were common to a lot of programs that they talked to, and a lot of their partners, and so they decided to put an open source license on it, and that enabled Sitka to spend and invest some of its own capital into launching the open source version of it in Project Firma. Project Firma is based in the EIP project tracker, but what we did is we took out all the TRPA specific elements and allowed other folks to put in their own program name, to add their own performance measures, to track their own objectives. And so this is what the Clackamas Partnership first did in 2017. Clackamas Partnership is a regional collective of about 13 different agencies and organizations. The Clackamas River, real quick, is a tributary to the Willamette River, which then flows into the Columbia. So it's right down the street from us, and many of us here in the office consider it some of our home waters. And so, but today, what we're going to talk about and what Mandy's going to talk about next is how a group of enterprising California RCDs began work to use this starting last year.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Today we want to start with an overview of RCDs in California. You can see on the slide, the state of California is almost completely covered by these individual resource conservation districts. And as you can see from the legend, they are grouped regionally and then really vary to a pretty extreme extent in size and also what they work on depending on where they're located in the state. Their partners and what they focus on. Typically, most districts are focusing on uplift of resources, water quality, quantity, soil health, sensitive species, sustainable ag, and education and outreach. And then collectively, we're managed under the California Association of RCDs. There are 501c3 kind of state advocacy organization that helps districts pool resources and build capacity individually, but also as a group so that we can better align ourselves for project funding that is statewide, that comes with responsibilities at the local level to make sure that every district has some capability that is somewhat aligned with the rest of the RCD community in California. And so just to give an example, district range, the Inland Empire RCD is headquartered in Redlands. We're halfway between Los Angeles and Palm Springs and have about a 1,300 square mile service area. One of our project highlights is on the screen. That's one of the things we work on the most, invasive species control. We have some people removing tree of heaven, a really invasive plant around here that requires initial herbicide treatment followed by biomass removal that has to be done by an arborist crew, which obviously necessitates some, significant funding. We want to make sure that that kind of work is captured so that we can have the public be aware of the services we're providing in a way that makes sense. We operate off a pretty considerable annual budget, the majority of which is funded by property tax. We're very lucky that way. And then contrasted to us, we've got another example district, the RCD of Greater San Diego County. They have over 3,000 square miles, so they're 2.5 times our size. They get less than 20% of our tax base, and they focus, because of their specific resource issues, much more on fire remediation work. They also do a lot of watershed-based education for their residents. And then contrast that to Northern California-based Gold Ridge RCD. They're about 400 square miles, so about a third of my district size. They do a lot of fish work, a lot of soil health work, and they have to do everything primarily off grants. They only get $22,000 a year in tax base. So looking at the sampling of 3 districts, I think provides an overview of just the extreme variance in what districts do and how they work. But collectively, we all began to agree in the past few years that the need for data collection, accurate management, and the ability to access that data as individual districts and as regions and as a state was becoming more and more important as we're asked to be transparent, but more, for reasons that are a little bit more practical, funding and our requests for advocacy on our behalf so that we can continue operations. So at one point, someone was introduced to the EIP for Lake Tahoe, showed it around, and people were impressed at the functionality and the way that it works, but also really impressed that they were able to take such an extreme variation of stakeholders in that region, collect data and show it in a way that's searchable and easily updated, which makes obviously the life of that tracker continue to be consistently useful. And so that really led to a push from districts to go to Sitka and see what we could do for our agencies, both individually and collectively, and have been really excited to work with them. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the project tracker history on the next slide. So really, I love being invited to talk today, but I would be lying if I said it was anybody but Mendocino RCD and Gold Ridge RCD that really spearheaded the majority of this. Came up with the idea, began working with Sitka, and really taking significant responsibility in design of what we wanted. Sitka obviously is the genius behind the project tracker, but they do have to know, what do we want? How do we want to show it? How is this going to work for this range and district function and size? So after that initial work, 18 districts have signed on and began entering projects in just as a method of determining, is this initial format going to work for us? What are the holes? What are the barriers so that we can have an ongoing kind of quality control and design change to really meet our needs? Funding has come from a really amazing program that the California Department of Conservation has managed for capacity building for RCDs. They provided a lot of the startup money to build the initial demo, which has been amazing. And then individual districts have supplemented with pledged money for that startup, and then will be required. We're still kind of circling around, how is this going to be funded long term? Because while the design is amazing and works very well right now, everybody, is more than aware, when you have this many individual districts entering data, no matter how engaged everyone is, you have to have an oversight, a QC person, to make sure this doesn't become less functional over time, and that's going to take money. So ultimately, it will be up to individual districts to financially support this going forward. Administratively, everybody who is a user has access. There is a team of RCDs along with Sitka that are looking at data coming in, making sure that edits are approved. But that's been a really quick process. And then as far as governance goes, I think people, you know, not everybody is on an identical page about exactly how this is going to, how suggested changes and kind of global changes especially are going to get considered and implemented. So to that extent, I think we're still kind of working on how that's going to function. And we'll talk more about that on the next slide. Okay, so the updated, you know, from the beginnings of this conversation, you know, I think that started probably 2 years ago to where we are now. I think, again, while our district has participated, we could not take credit. It's really the hard work of those 2 districts and some really dedicated individuals. But phase 1 and phase 2 have been completed and have gone from basic entry of project data to being able to enter in training videos, project workflow, and updating the way that reports are pulled and how they are viewed. Phase 3 is in progress. We're working on a plan and we are seeking funding. Next slide. So this is one of the more interesting, I think, functions of the way that the RCD project tracker works. The stakeholder team came up with a number of what they call themes to make sure that, you know, we don't have 500 categories representing every single project every district ever does. That would be crazy, but that those individual project categories could be aligned within kind of catch-all terms that really represent either the resource they're addressing or kind of the regional uplift that they're assisting with. And the really nice part about the diversity in themes is it does enable participation by every district. As we discussed earlier, there's so much difference in what we do. It's been, you know, it's enabled everybody to put their project in, whether they're working on endangered species or local ag or forests. And I think it does save when you, I mean, one of the benefits, I'm sure people are gonna have questions about what are the exact reasons that you would get into this. I mean, the amazing benefit is we can then go and pull reports as a user on any of these things, not just data that we know, and it saves us time from when we're asked for quick provision of data on work of RCDs on endangered species or climate change, et cetera, instead of making a series of panicked calls or firing off emails to other managers and hoping they're in the office, they can get us that info. We don't have to go through any of that. We can just pull it very quickly, and it is reliable peer-reviewed data or third-party QC data that we're then presenting to stakeholders.
And for folks that are on the call that may be aware of the open standards for the practice of conservation, these themes are really, these are targets that folks' theories of change are working towards improving. So the system could be flexible and explicitly state that, but for RCDs, this is how they kind of wanted to present and tell their story.
Oh, and then the project map. I think being able to pull that up and looking at the geographic split really allows, you know, you can view by theme, but you can also view obviously regionally, statewide, and I think it lets any user, you know, you don't have to be a project stakeholder, anybody that wants to view what RCDs do on a regional basis. You can see, you know, clustering of projects and then drill down and see exactly what those districts are working on to look at trends. And then we also added the legislative districts, which has been an unbelievable tool. Similar to what we talked about with the themes, we are asked regularly to outreach to local, regional, statewide appointed and elected officials, and this allows a quick generation of data so that they can see what's happening in their specific district, and the ability to pull that information and then kind of pull out of it what that specific elected person is interested in based on, you know, their work, their committee participation, et cetera, has been Again, something that used to be so incredibly days of work to pull this information together is now, a matter of minutes to generate a report, which we've done. It's been incredibly, incredibly helpful. And this is an example. This is pieces to get it to fit all on one page. This isn't exactly how it looks, but this is the core information that is available immediately when you go to a project that we have entered in. So, the way that it used to work in our office, individual areas of responsibility, under different departments, you had to go to those people to get this information, request an email, wait for that person to get back to you. And the way that it works now, being able to pull a report, you get these really key pieces of information that you could use in everything from reporting to, sharing on social media, provision to partners, use in grant applications. And as you can see, you have key photos, you have partners, you have budget, map, project description, and then you have key accomplishments. This is a Student Landowner Education and Watershed Stewardship, or SLUES program, a Center for Land-Based Learning design that we've started conducting in our own district. So I think the accomplishments would be longer for a different kind of project. In this one, we really talk about the number of students engaged, but you would be able to have key accomplishments for other projects, number of trees planted, or acre feet of water saved, et cetera, would be able to pop up. And then it also shows you the project themes that we identified as this project fitting into. And because of the nature of work, it fit into ag and endangered species, healthy watersheds, and education.
All right, so I'm gonna hop in here and steer for a bit and actually enter in a project, just so you guys can kind of see what that looks like. So let me get our screen up here. All right, Matt, can you see my screen now?
I can, yes.
All right, so I'm actually just gonna enter in a project as a user through IERCD. So right now I'm logged in as myself, and I'm listed as the project steward for our district. So what that means is I have the final okay on when projects are entered. So anyone who has an account that's set up through the RCD project tracker within our district is allowed to enter projects, and they're considered proposals. And then those proposals are then reviewed by myself, whoever else is the project steward for that district. And then once they're approved, they can be posted as ongoing projects. Yes, so as we move through this, I'm just gonna point out a couple of things real quick. So the project tracker on my screen looks quite nice. We have all these really incredible photos that I think maybe Goldridge provided. They might look a little bit fuzzy or jagged on some of the web browsers, but if you check it out online, it actually looks really nice. All this stuff can be viewed by anybody at rcdprojects, I believe, .org. So I would definitely encourage you to check that out just to kind of get a feel for how this looks. But anyway, so I'm going to move through just adding a new project to the site and just show everybody what that kind of looks like. So if I go to add a project here, this is a nice new feature that has recently been added. So when we first started doing this, we were adding in all projects as if they were brand new. But now, as you can see, we can sort of do this either adding projects that are happening at the present time, or we can go and add projects that are already underway or things that RCDs have already completed. So this has sort of helped us to create a more robust system that allows us to track projects that we've done and we want to showcase to the public or to legislators or whoever else is interested. But I'm going to add just a brand new project as if we were just starting something for the first time here. So this has really been pretty easy to use. Honestly, right from the get-go, I've been able to jump in and enter projects pretty seamlessly. All these instructions are provided to either the project steward or whoever else in the district is providing the data for projects. So once all this stuff is reviewed, I can go right in and start proposing a new project. And so we're actually going to be looking at a specific one today that is a little bit different than the SLUES program Mandy was talking about. This is more of a mitigation restoration project. So I can go through all these categories and figure out what best fits. In this case, it's a riparian habitat restoration. And that's just one of the ways we can categorize this data and find it later as easy as possible. So this specific one is the Goose Creek Restoration Project. Google is already guessing what it is I'm entering. So I'm actually going to pull up our project data here real quick, just so that you guys can see what this looks like. I just didn't want to have you guys watch me type all this stuff up, as fun as that would be. So anyway, once all this data is in the system, we can set stewards for these projects and points of contact, which is really great, and start to get into how these things are funded, which is very helpful. In this case, this is semi-true data, but I'm just sort of making up some of the numbers just so you guys can see that these operating costs can be entered and changed and updated as you move through, depending on how projects develop. You know, sometimes things get more expensive or they don't cost as much as expected, whatever else. So in this case, I'm just going to sort of move through some general dates, just kind of placeholders here. All right, so this is kind of an interesting situation as well, where we have different layers of how we can view the locations of these projects, depending on how detailed projects are at the point of inception or creation. So as you can see, there's a no location option. So sometimes, you know, projects don't necessarily happen in one specific area. They might be a district-wide program or an education campaign.
Brian, it sounds like your audio is kind of cutting out a little bit. I'm not sure if.
Hang on, let me see what our microphone situation is like here.
Good.
I'll try again.
Am I coming through? Good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just let me know if that sounds where we can call in as well if we need to. So the first layer of location data, we can just kind of zoom in and just get a general feel for where some of these projects are taking place. And so this is has a couple of different layers on there you can check out depending on how your project is set up. So, you know, we can look at these in terms of watersheds. We can add aerial imagery to figure out where exactly these projects are located. So once you have a point selected in the system, this sort of provides just a general location. This is what's used on those overarching slides that Mandy covered before, where you can kind of see just generally where projects are taking place. So in this case, we are over in this area doing restoration work. So I'll just pick a point here just to sort of get us started. And that just serves as sort of a reference point. And then as we move through, we can get more specific about where this is taking place. So we have a couple options as we get into a detailed location. We can upload a geodatabase file if that's within district's capacity. In this case, I'm just going to zoom in on it and put a polygon in place here. There we go. So since I have a map in front of me, I can see exactly where our restoration project's taking place, and just sort of, you know, draw up the more specific version of where our restoration is. But sometimes NRCS can provide maps for districts or what have you to make this more specific. But that's sort of the general outline of our project. So you can get a really clear idea of where exactly projects taking place, what area of land we're working on for restoration or for education or whatever else. And then we sort of get into watersheds, which is a nice way to view some of this data as well, not in terms of percentage districts, but in terms of how watersheds are affected by this. So since this is a restoration project and we're fixing some area that was damaged by a golf course, we can see what watersheds were impacting by this, what areas we might be helping. So if I zoom out a little bit, you know, we can see we're in the East Etiwanda Creek sub-watershed of the Santa Ana River. So I can select that here, and you can see that this project takes place well within this boundary. But if there are multiple watersheds affected, you can select multiple as well. All right, so this is another new feature that has come up pretty recently, which has been really useful in terms of tracking the other people who are involved. So in this case, we are the lead implementer of this as well as the associated RCD. But if there's, a nonprofit involved or a federal agency or state agency, whoever is, involved in this, we can list those people as well. And then quite easily look up and record what legislative districts we're in. And this data, is then used to categorize things and find it later, so that all this stuff can be pulled pretty quickly in case people are wondering. So these, the funder, partner, stakeholder tabs are also helpful for us because we can start to track who our partners are, who we're working with a lot, where are the funding sources for RCDs coming from. As Mandy said, they can vary quite a bit from district to district. So being able to categorize all this is really helpful. At this point, we have a set list of funders that's growing pretty rapidly, and the same with the partners and the stakeholders. If there's something that we need that's not listed, that's kind of where the quality control and admin support from either CARCD or from another RCD, whoever is running administration comes from. They have to help us sort of enter that data in. And then we have those funders, partners, and stakeholders that are listed for whenever we need them. All right. So this sort of gets into more of the nitty gritty. I'm not going to enter in all the project data just because there's quite a bit of it, but I'm going to run you through just one real quick so you can see. So in this case, since we're doing restoration of a riparian area, we might say that one of our performance measures that we're measuring is how much land have we restored. So if I go into there we go, stream corridor. So I can add these really simple metrics and start to look at. So in this case, we're adding our pairing buffer to stream corridor, and we can enter in the methods that we're using. And so we can really get really specific about what we're doing. So in this case, let's say we're planting something to stabilize the bank and prevent erosion, then we can, list exactly how much of that we're doing. We can store as many of these performance values as we want and update them over time to increase the total deliverables for the project and show what we're expecting to accomplish or what has already been accomplished as these projects sort of grow and evolve. And this can store data, anything from public outreach, how many people are involved in a volunteer event, through how many acres of habitat are restored, all the way through something like this, where we can record, plants that we've installed or ways that we're reducing fire potential, anything like that.
Hey, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
We have a question, actually. It's probably for something you just showed a second ago, but the question is, are you able to add multiple funders and amounts?
Yes. So here, I can go back to that real quick. So, and I'll just pull up a couple not real ones. So you can kind of see you can add multiple sources of funding. Right through here.
And what if a funder isn't on there?
Yes, and that's where we at this point are requiring administrative support. I can't enter in my own additional funders, partners, or stakeholders, but I can request someone be added through the administrators for the project tracker, and then those are then added to the list so I can use them again later, because often RCDs are working with the same partners on several different projects. Once they're in the system, they'll stay there, and we can continue to reference them and go back to them.
And just to clarify, that's not Sitka has to add that. It's just the administrator, whoever the RCD folks have assigned that some of the things that they wanted to have central control, just so that we wouldn't get duplicate funder names and there's a consistency in the list.
Right.
The person asked kind of a further clarifying question. What about multiple funded components of a project? Mm-hmm. And she knows many funders fund separate components of a project.
Yes, good question. So I will get to that. So the next actually tab that I'm going to go to is expected funding. So here's where you can kind of get into who's funding what. So just as an example, let's say that a lot of the funding for this project is coming from our internal general fund at IERCD, but we also have a component that is going to be funded by the NRCS. So I can go and enter them as well. And they should be in here. Oh, yes, there they are. So through our cooperative agreements with NRCS, which is a pretty common tool used by RCDs, we can add them as well. And then we can list how much of the funding is being provided by each organization. So the annual operating cost of $5,000, let's say that half's coming from the district and half's coming from NRCS. We can enter those in.
And what about, I think the person might also be asking, like, what if the NRCS said we're just funding the cost of the vegetation, like the container stock, and then the IERCD is funding the irrigation system? Like, that actually might be a good suggestion if we can't already do that.
Yeah, so at least as far as I'm aware, we can't be that specific here in terms of what each of these organizations is paying for. I would think that the best way to explain that at this point would be this note section over here, just adding that information in. It won't be listed in this expected funding tab here, but you can make a note of it, and that will be viewable later on. As we continue to develop this, that might be something that we need to add just to explain the budget breakdown of who is paying for what, and then what does that add up to, for sure.
Yeah.
I love the suggestion. That's something that would be pretty easy for us to add.
Yeah, that's a good one. I hadn't actually come up with that one before. But yeah, we could really break down this budget even farther and explain what services NRCS are providing and what parts of a project that they're funding versus what's being provided by an RCD. And you could really get a good picture of what suite of services each of the partners has in the project.
And kind of nice if it's a strict grant situation where it's very specific who is paying for what and what people can't pay for.
Right.
That's a very, whoever asked that question, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I like that a lot.
One thing you can do in the system is once this is all entered in, or you can pull up a view for just an organization or one of the organization's funding sources. So the structure is that an organization can have 0 to many funding sources.
Right.
When Brian searched for NRCS, you saw that there's 4 different funding sources there. Each funding source has its own kind of view and page in the system, so that the funder can go there and see what are they actually funding. And there's a description field, so they can specify what types of projects or what type of work the fund is intended to fund. And that's more globally. But the suggestion that came through the question, I think, is great, which is, given the context of a particular project, what is this funding source funding? And that could be easily added, but the top level view of the funding source is already there.
So actually, I think that brings up a good point too, is sort of having all those organizations be able to explain, what this grant in general at a more global level funds is really helpful, because all that data can be pulled up pretty easily. And I'll cover that once I'm through entering this mostly fake project. So the last big part here is this project's themes area. So this is where we can list those categories that Mandy was showing us before. So we can sort of check these off and explain, how these projects fit into different categories, so that we can later pull them and, really get a good picture of all the different projects that might apply to climate change or education that an RCD is doing. So in the case of a restoration project, we'd probably say that we're working on healthy watersheds, maybe groundwater, and potentially endangered species, let's say. And then I can go in and start to just give a quick summary of what's going on our project, why these are impacting. Let's say that we have least Bell's Viro's endangered bird within this restoration area. We could explain that there and maybe refer people to more information. I think I'm getting other questions here.
Yeah, I think I want to make sure that we leave time for questions at the end. So that question that just came in, I will save to start off the Q&A section. How's that sound?
Sounds good. All right, so we're just going to pretend that nothing's affected, so you guys don't have to watch me type stuff.
Well, you'll need to select one and just type in any text.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, I'll just put in that we're dealing with least Bell's Viro. And so this is a pretty self-explanatory area, just entering in photos as you move through a project. So if I am, looking to add something, I can move through and pick something. Let's say that since this project is in theory a proposal for a new one, we would take before photos of what the site looks like now, and then we would explain who took the photo and when, why this is important. Choose the category for the timing, and indicate what it looks like before we started the project. And then as we start to actually implement this restoration project, we would take pictures of the crew coming in and planting, riparian vegetation, or putting in a stream buffer, or whatever tasks are associated with this. And then at the end, we can add those after photos and really get a nice snapshot of how the project developed over time. And then the last section here is just notes. So in the meantime, if there are other pieces of information that are important for whatever reason, things that aren't easily entered at this point, they can be added there, just so that there's an easy place to hold on to that. either if it's something that's kind of miscellaneous or something that needs to be explained in more detail, what have you, can be added here. So that's sort of just sort of rundown of what the workflow looks like. I can submit this for review, and then it'll go into this mode here where I can kind of see the summary of what the project looks like now. So as you can see, there's a nice map of where this project's located, what watersheds we're looking at, funding sources summary, everything that we just covered, and this sort of timeline up here of what stage of the project we're in. So as this starts to develop, I can change this from a proposal once it's approved by the project steward, which in this case is me. It'll become planning and design phase project. And then once we start this project, we would then be implementing it and move through the workflow like that. So that is a brief rundown of a project demo. Damon, do you want me to look at the sort of some of the project info and stuff like that, or leave it there?
I think we only have about 18 minutes left. I do want to leave time. I guess I would probably proceed, and if we have time, then we'll come back to this. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
But thank you, that was wonderful. So that was really valuable. So I'm gonna take over the screen share again. I think you all can see the online demo slide now. Okay. And back to you, Mandy.
Briefly, I think a really important part of this process that Sitka really helped us understand was the need to engage stakeholders, the districts that are participating, to make sure people not only understand why we're doing this, but feel that they can be a part of the process, whether or not they have extreme capacity to do so or limited capacity, that outreaching in different ways and providing different opportunities to give feedback and try their own projects was really important. So to that end, we just made sure that the development process was really transparent, that anybody could participate that wanted to, tried to create meeting opportunities, multiple kinds of meeting opportunities for people to engage in. And then also the two original RCDs that really got this started took a lot of opportunity to present at regional meetings and annual RCD conferences where they could reach a large number of board members and staff members who may or may not have already started engaging. And then we also, Brian was talking about the ability to suggest administrative changes. I think people that are on the admin team for the RCD project tracker have a really great response time, and we receive auto responses when our work is requested. They get right back to us with an email that says they've done it. We've got a link to the changes. So I feel like you can really see that your suggestions and your work is being listened to and implemented.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then just, I think, my final, just kind of statement on this, I wanted to make sure, and you can definitely, ask Brian and I for more information, but for the IERCD, I think we're getting more and more requests for in our transparency process. What are we doing? How are we doing it? How well are we doing it? Not hearing explanations, but numbers. People reached acres conserved, acre feet of water improved. I think we want to make sure that, we're able to give those answers on a group basis with consistent backed up data. And that's something that the project tracker has really enabled us to do communication with public and partners on the really quality work that we do. RCDs have always been called the best kept secret in conservation, and we don't want to be that. We want to be the obnoxious, braggart group of districts that make sure people know what we're doing. Not really, but I mean, we want to make sure people know, and this tracker allows for that. So it's been a really valuable process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so real quick, to make sure we save time for questions. What's next? We are really focused on ensuring the success of the Clackamas Partnership and the California RCDs as they transition from early adopters of the tool and what it affords in terms of process changes to operationalizing it. So we're doing things like hosting user group sessions every quarter, make sure that Mandy and Brian have a chance to talk with John Runyon and Cheryl McGinnis of the Clackamas Partnership to hear what's working and how they're using it and learn from each other. And then Gene McNamara and Ken Caseman of the TRPA, who we've worked with for many, many years and are really the motive force behind a lot of this, they're joining the conversation. They love to hear how their investment's being leveraged, and they're getting ideas even for how the tool that they thought was done could even be better by the way other people are using it. And so it's really a pretty neat experience, and our goal this year is to add 4 more folks to the community, 4 more programs, and we're doing things like adding online training videos. We just added that a few weeks ago, just to help make it as easy as possible for folks to get up and running and using the system and contributing back to the community. And the neat thing is, when the RCDs find something that they want to improve on, let's say it's like adding that little bit of text to explain what the funding source is for, everyone else gets that functionality because it's an open source platform. So the data is kept separate, but the functionality is all shared. So that's kind of that first bullet there. Let us know if it's something that's of interest to you. We have ongoing conversations with a number of different organizations right now who are looking to join the community. So it's exciting times. I think with that, we should make sure we cut over and have time for questions.
Thank you, Matt, Brian, and Mandy. I really appreciate it. I think it's been a great webcast so far. Before, I do have a few questions in queue, and if you do have a question, please ask it now via the Q&A console, or you can also use the chat. Either will work. So please take advantage of that. Here is the contact information from Mandy, Brian, and Matt. So feel free to follow up directly with them if you have any individual questions and would like to learn more. And also there's a link to more information about Project Firma there on the website too. So, but one of the questions that came in, I'd like to start off with is, historically, privacy concerns have prevented the RCDs from feeling comfortable about sharing project locations, et cetera. Is there resistance due to privacy concerns, or do we expect widespread adoption of this tool across California RCDs?
I think that one of the things, and I would want Brian's opinion also here, I think what I've seen is definitely concerns because we are a public agency and we're subject to, the Public Records Act, and you really do have to be careful about sharing personal information, particularly for individual residents. And I think the way that's been handled here is the ability to put a general location. You can just leave it at Watershed if you want. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have a specific, you can just have a polygon in the general area where the project is occurring. And that seems to be pretty comfortable for people. And I think we would, if it was a very concerned property owner or group, I think we would refine detail, like, be considerate of that when we name the project. Right. For example, Brian was entering in Goose Creek Golf Course. If they didn't want to be known, we would think of a different project name.
Right. We probably wouldn't have put a pin right on top of the golf course,
right.
For example.
But that's a good concern. But you do, because of the level of control you have in entering in your own data, you can make it as private as you need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that has come up with some other groups as well. And one of the things that's on our wish list or our backlog is the ability at the programmatic level to hide the detailed location. So still allow it to be entered in for internal purposes, but for public viewing, use, for example, the centroid of the RCD district boundary or the watershed or what have you. So it's something that we're tracking, and I hope to be able to add to the system sometime soon.
Great. We do have another question here. How do RCDs deal with how project summaries are written? Do they have a set of copy rules that are applied by all the participants using the tracker?
So maybe I'll start, and then I'd love to hear how Mandy and Brian are dealing with it. But we very intentionally, after a lot of discussion with the RCDs, set the project description character length to be somewhat small. And the idea is to really force people to be concise and brief and to tell the story, but so also so that it fits on the 2-page fact sheet. And so that some people are kind of bummed by that. Like, I really want to be able to tell the full story and get all the details and the neat techniques we're using. And so another idea that's come up is be able to add like an attachment to a project and allow people to attach a PDF or a Word document that goes into all sorts of detail for folks that want it. So I think that's probably something that's coming soon, but not in the system right now. But then the other part of the question was less about the length and more just about maybe the quality or kind of content standards. And I don't know, Mandy and Brian, have you guys, has that come up?
I think that's why you choose a district and project administrator.
Like, right. So that demo that I just ran, those projects were only entered in as proposals. Those weren't viewable to just anybody. Those stay in a set spot where all the proposals are until they're reviewed. So at the very least, QC consists of someone entering the project and then the project steward reviewing it. However, those can be the same person. So for example, I just entered that in as someone entering the project. And then since I'm the project steward, I would also be the one who would give final approval of it. So that's the only like concrete level of review at this point, as far as I'm aware.
But I think also districts select somebody who they feel is the most, know, kind of, a good writer, or somebody who can put together project information in a really concise manner. So I think that's another thing that's kind of encouraged of districts that are participating. So there is a, kind of higher level oversight where somebody reviews what you did, but you also want to start with someone who is doing all, if not the majority of your project reviews, so that you don't have 20 people from your district all entering projects in all in a different manner. You want to have kind of that one person.
Great. One person asked if they'll get a copy of the webinar to share. I am recording today's webinar, and it will be posted to our website. All attendees and actually registrants who aren't able to make it will get emails tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, with a link to that, so you can access that. If you'd like a PDF of the presentation deck, you can email me and just respond to that email that you'll be getting.
And I've heard a couple people ask, and I wanted to ask Matt what Sitka's process generally is for a new, organization that's interested in adapting this model for themselves. Kind of what the beginning of that is, what that looks like.
We're going through that with, 4 or 5 different organizations right now. It starts with getting an understanding of what is the program's objectives. Do they have a framework? What are their strategies for accomplishing their conservation or sustainable development goals? And do they have a history of tracking performance? Do they have performance measures in place? And so that's really the foundation of these of the system, and that's where I think you get the most value out of a system like Project Tracker, like Project Firma. And so if they don't have those things in place, we have a partner that we often work with, or a set of partners that can actually come in and help folks develop performance measures. Sitka's dedicated for 10 years, all we've done is build systems for this space. And so we know enough to know when performance measures are needed, or when maybe the structure of them aren't quite ideal. They're not necessarily good performance measures for measuring the objectives. But as far as the hard work of stakeholder engagement and getting people around the diverse group of folks around a table to come up with the right performance measures, that's where we kind of pull in experts. And there's firms out there like Environmental Incentives and another one's Foundations of Success. Those organizations, that's all that they do. And so that can be very helpful. But we also have, to help people envision and get an idea of what it might be like, we have the ability to very quickly stand up a demonstration site. So we've done that for Idaho Soil and Water Conservation Commission, for a group called the International Year of the Salmon up in Canada, for a group here in Oregon. Watershed Enhancement Board has had some focused investment partnerships, and we just recently set up a demo for a program based in Ashland, Oregon, or in that area. So part of it is getting people excited about the potential of what could be there, but then also having those conversations around, all right, what are the programmatic underpinnings that we want to elevate and report on? and getting that structure in place. And sometimes it's, you know, it's all set up and you have it. Other times you have to slow down a little bit, get at least a straw man together, try it out in the system, enter a few projects and see how that works.
And I think that just the level of experience you guys have in working with so many groups that have this kind of broad user capacity, funding, program focus helps people narrow, you know, what exactly it is they're asking for so you can build the most effective platform.
Yeah, the other thing we do is it's going to reach a point where poor Jean at TRPA won't be able to sustain it, but she's been very willing to get on the phone and talk with folks who are in the shopping aisle, kind of like, is this a good investment? How would it work? What kind of time is it going to require of me and my staff? And Jean's more than happy to get on the phone with folks. And Brittany and Patricia, they also from the Mendocino and Gold Ridge are also been very helpful. I mean, you guys are great. We love working with you. You're super, you have an orientation to partnering and helping folks out. So it feels good to leverage that. I mean, TRPA put over $1 million into the system, and now we're able to stand up a new instance for less than 1/10 of that. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, I don't actually have any more questions in queue, so I think at this point we can, wait, maybe one just popped in. Okay, no, that's just a follow-up. So I appreciate all your guys' time and effort in doing this. I think it's been a wonderful sharing of the successes in California. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone, for listening in. All right, David, are we off air or are we still on?
We are off.
Okay. Well, thanks, Mandy and Brian. I think that you guys did awesome. It worked. I think it was great and very authentic and super good.
Thanks. Appreciate you guys setting it up.
Yeah, we enjoyed it.
You're going to be on YouTube here shortly, so
Nice.
get ready.
Brian's going to tell us about it. She's our biggest fan on all our social
she's
media.
on it. She'll definitely.
Who's that?
My grandmother.
Grandma.
Oh my gosh.
She'll have no idea what we're talking about, but she'll follow it anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, Damon, I think we may still be live, so people are maybe seeing how silly we are. Maybe that's okay.
Okay, well, just in case, we'll take it off here, but thank you so much.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.